Okay, so CSS selectors are basically used to define the elements to which the CSS rules are going to apply, right? So it was pretty much obvious here that here we are writing div, which means that this rule, this whole rule containing these two declarations are going to apply to this thing div. And if you are not already clear, it should be clear, right, that I can write multiple rules also, right? And let's say here I write some background color is equal to let's say some color, and this, when I'm targeting this, let's try this and you see what will happen. So let's comment this part. So I will mention later the comments in or it is a good time to mention that the comments in CSS is basically is like some other programming language like C or C++. Slash star it starts with, and slash and star slash it ends with. Anything you put here, that is a comment in CSS. But this is not CSS. You see, I am outside style tag. So here in HTML, the comment will be this only. This is a comment, right? But when you are in style, then when you are in either in style tag or you are in a proper separate file, you see this file. So when you are in CSS file, then this sort of comment is valid. When you are inside style tag, then also this type of comment is valid, right? But in HTML, definitely this sort of comment which we saw earlier, that is only valid. Okay. Anyways, so let's comment for now this whole style tag, and why it will be this thing, because if see, there are two ways, right? One way is that I commented the whole element. When I am commenting the whole element, then I have to do HTML commenting, because this element is part of HTML. However, there is another way to do it, that I will keep the style tag. But I will just comment the CSS. But now when I'm commenting the CSS, I will use the CSS commenting. It might be confusing, but you will understand, right, that now it is part of CSS, and that's why this type of commenting is used. Anyways, my idea was that to show you that what I was saying, that you see that I am targeting a div. So this hello part is a div, and there are two rules. This rule and this rule, right? When we are targeting the final CSS which is applied here, you can see that both the rules are merged and they are finally applied, which means that color is there, font size is there, and background color is there. All are there, right? Now your question might be something like that: if I use again color is equal to let's say some green, right, then will this color apply or not? You try to see. Yes, the new color applied. Actually, we'll see in CSS precedence later, but the point is that whichever is written later, actually that gets applied. So see, if I put it below and I refresh, again it is red. Again, we will come back to that in some time. But the point is that the selectors are these part which are trying to target the particular elements in the HTML. So something like this. Now there are many types of selectors. We will discuss in detail in some other video, but here I would like to discuss some very common types, 2-3 very common types of CSS selectors. One thing is actually what we just now saw, type selector, which means that any valid tag of HTML can be used as a target, and that is known as type selector. There are other two types of selectors called class selector and ID selector. So we'll look at them one by one. Type selector we already know, right? Selects all elements that have the given tag name. So tag name is div, tag name is span. So they can be used as simply a selector. That is fine. Now let's come to the this first type of actually this is very important because this is the most popular type of selector which is used throughout the industry. Class selector. Class selector actually is used with a attribute of HTML called class attribute. It is something like this, that okay, let me explain. If there is an element with class attribute and you put any name, this is like your whatever name you want you can put here. Whatever name you put here, you put that name here and start with a dot. If you start with a dot, then you tell CSS that this is a class, this is a class, and it must be present somewhere with class is equal to. What CSS will do, CSS will take this name, like after removing dot, whatever the name is there, and it will look for all the elements which are having that as class attribute, and those all on those all elements this style will be applied. You understand, right? So I'll come back to this later, but let me show you. So for example, when I say that this is a div, this is a span, if I want to target both of them, then let's say I put a firstly let's target just one of them. So let's target just this thing, class is equal to, and let's say my text, whatever is the class. So this thing is the class name. Now inside the style sheet I can use dot this thing, and whatever I will write here, let's say I want to make it bold, and I save it, refresh it, you see the second line has become bold. Now if you apply this thing to the first thing, then the same style will be applied above also. See, this has also become bold. See, the idea is that you can clearly understand that the same element can be targeted by multiple selectors. See, this thing, this element is targeted by my text class selector also, and div selector also. You see, in fact 3 from this and 2 div selectors. So you can see that multiple CSS rules can target to the same HTML element. So that is perfectly fine. If they are independent, that is fine. If they are conflicting, then the latest one, like the last one, is applied. That is fine. But still, let's say this is a huge file you have written somewhere green, and you are seeing that white is red, you are not able to debug. Then again, what did I say? You can clearly debug this, and you can say that, yeah, I can clearly see that. So I told you that you can clearly see that okay, color green is there, but color red is right now active, and you can clearly see that, yeah. So which means that somewhere other style is there, and if you remove this, then it becomes green, but if you apply this, so this is the default behavior. So now if those sort of things are happening, that rules are not applying, and those things, then you can debug those things. That definitely if I am writing something and there is a crossover, like there is a that this rule is crossed in the debugging part of the developer tools in CSS, right? Then I see that definitely after this line, somewhere in the style sheet or some other embedded style, somewhere there is a rule which is conflicting with this, and this is overwriting. That is fine. Okay. Now let's come back to this part. This part is div.myClass. Okay, what does this mean? This means that this last time, so let's comment this whole thing for now. So we saw that once I have a, let's copy this and let's work with this only. Yeah, so right now if we have no styles, then obviously no styles is applied. Now you see that if I put this style, then what is happening is that this CSS rule is applied to both. Why? Because both have class is equal to my text attribute, and dot my text will be applied to both of them. Now you see that this is div, this is div, and this is div, and same class is applied. Again this is span, and this thing is there. Now you see that both are bold. Now I want to target just span and make it red, but I still want to make both bold. You understood the problem scenario. I still want this style sheet to be applied to both cases, but apart from this, again I want this span with this class to be red, let's say. Then I can write something like this, that okay, I want just span, and in span I want my text. So select all span elements which have a class attribute of my text. That is the meaning of this, and then make its color, let's say, red. Then this rule will be applied to both, and this rule will be applied to only span, and then we can see that it is red. So this is the meaning, and the same thing you can apply like div dot my class. Then there is a div element with class is equal to my class. It will be applied to that only. And let's come back to ID selector. This thing is not that commonly used, but still we'll see. It selects an element based on the value of its ID attribute, which means that the any particular element can have a ID attribute. ID attribute is actually an element ID which should be unique throughout the HTML document. Again, HTML will not complain if you don't put unique, but your JavaScript might complain. So for example, and that can create problems later. But for now, I'll simply say that any element which is having ID, you can target it by hash or like pound sign, whatever. So you say that if it is class is equal to, and you can understand why class is so popular, because you see it solves a lot of problems. Like I don't need to bother about that it should be unique or whatever. Just wherever you want to share some styles, that put a class is equal to something, and then put a dot, and that will be fine, right? But I'll just like to share that, let's say I put ID is equal to and let's say my div, right? Then I can take this thing and I can put hash my div, and if I write something here, then this thing will be applied to div only, because I am just targeting this ID. Color, let's say blue. Then if I refresh, you can see it has become blue. So first thing you saw that how to target ID, hash, and then name of the ID. Second thing you saw by now is that too many like you can clearly see that div can be applied, div selector, ID selector, both, or many of it can be used like something like that. More than one selectors in combination at the same element is being used. You can see that you can use ID selector, class selector, all at the same time. So that and all is not a worry for us. You can use all those things at once. Just I mentioned there should be one and only one element with a given ID. Please never repeat a particular ID in some other element. Okay. Now we'll see something called selector list. So selector list is that what if I want to apply the same styles to multiple elements, which means that let's say I don't have all these things. right? So I want to make this, let's remove everything. I want to make let's say this blue. So I want to make div, I want to make it blue, and I want to make span also blue. Okay, fine. Now see that the styles are being shared here, and I'm just for example writing one line. There can be 10 declarations here, right, and 10 declarations here. What if 5 of them are common? Then why we are duplicating that, right? So what we can do, you can understand. Let's say its font size is let's say 30 pixel, and its font size is let's say 20 pixel. So you understand that still there is something difference between both of them, but some things are common. Let's say color thing, but it is such that if I want to change, if I change this color, then this also should change. So if I am changing it here, then I have to remember that I have to change here also. Otherwise, the colors will be different, and it is not expected. For solving that, there is another type of thing which is called selector list, where what we do is that the if we put multiple selectors and put a comma, then they can be grouped together. So we can write simply like div comma span, something like this, and then put the common style there rather than here. This is what I was meaning. So the you can use next line also in you can use like this also, or you can use next line also. So it will automatically see that comma is there, which means that I have to keep on going till the first brace is there, and all these selectors it will apply this rule, and now you can see that it is working fine. What is the advantage? The advantage is that if I make green at one place, at both places it will be changing, right? So all the common things can be put at one place, and the syntax is this thing comma for selector list. Okay, so that is what I am explaining here, that if there are two or more elements, in fact you can have 2, 3, whatever, separated by comma. If 3 are there, 4 are there, any number of selectors, they can be separated by comma, and we can use something like this. Now this is the important topic. We will see next that what is CSS precedence.